I'm Leah from Patchwork Picnic, and today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make the Hexie flower box. Details of the pattern is attached. So I cut out all my shapes. You can see from my reference that they all match. Now I used a cry cut, but you can use scissors. Just be aware that some of them have just very small differences in size. So make sure you cut on the outside of the line, and you could either make a template or you could stick the shapes onto the card and cut round them. So normally I'm a thread baster, but for these box projects I definitely use glue. I just use this craft glue. I know it's strong, so it's going to stay in place, and obviously the card doesn't need to be removed, so we don't need to worry about removing the papers afterwards, which you might do if you glue base normally for a wall hanging or a quilt. So I'm just going to glue down the side first. I fold in both sides and then I fold down the top because you get a bit of a neater finish on the top edge. And then I use scrap card to just clip to the front to protect the front. Otherwise I find I get little indents with these clips. Try not to get the glue too close to the edge. It can be a bit of a struggle to then sew into if there's a big blob of glue at the top. So try and sort of be in by a little bit, a little margin. So I'm going to glue across the top, fold that down. Now it's important to get a nice crisp fold on these corners, otherwise the side of the corner can sort of stick out, so I tend to push it in with a needle or a fingernail just to keep it at a right angle. So push it up right into the corner. Oh, it's not gone quite right, just have another go. That's much better. This is the fabric for my bee pieces. These are the small pieces that go in the sort of corner section of the box. There's 12 of these to wrap. Do them the same way. Start with the sides first and then fold the top over after that. Now you could thread baste if you preferred the idea of that. I normally do thread baste actually, but I find that with these boxes having the glue there just makes it a little bit stronger when you're attaching. Sometimes you have to pull the fabric quite tight and you get a nice flat finish if you use glue. I do leave quite a generous seam allowance, more so than when I'm doing my normal cutting for paper piecing actually. It just feels like it has more to stick in place, feels more substantial. So these are my shape A's. These are the ones, the slightly wider shapes. These go at the end of the flat edge, slightly wider, and there's only 6 of these. Just clip it in.
Sometimes if the corner's been a bit stubborn, you sort of give it a little bit of a twist and it just sort of slides along, and then you push it in the corner with your nail or a needle or something similar. These are my jewel shapes. The E, which goes right on the very bottom, so I've done it quite a plain colour because you don't really see the bottom. And then F is the bottom on the inside. So you do it the same way. I tend to stick put glue on the 3 sides at the top and then clip with a bit of card. Again, you've got to make sure you get right into the corners. Try and sort of twist it to get a nice taut finish. Then I go down and do the 2 pointy edges. Now this is where it's important to make sure that you do the same side each time so that the tails always face the same way. Then they'll sit nicely when they're all sewn together, which I'll show you later.
So I finished gluing all the elements for the outside of the box, my shape A's, my shape B's and my jewel base shape E's. So these are still drying at the moment. I'm going to start sewing together the ones that are dry and ready to go. So the way we line them up is we have one shape A with 2 shape B's. Make sure that they're the right way up in relation to each other.
So I'm going to start with these 2. I've chosen white to join them just because it matches the white panel. Literally starting right in the corner, and I'm just going to join all the way along. Can be a little bit tough when you get started, depending on how taut it is. Sometimes you have to just force your needling. I'm just doing like a whip stitch. I don't think you need to do anything particularly fancy. Because these ones, they bend inwards, I think you're going to see the stitch on the outside regardless. I think it's probably just more important to try and keep them neat and evenly spaced. Oh, it's a little bit tough here. Just keep trying, and eventually you'll get through. This isn't great for the needles though. I generally get through quite a few when I'm making these boxes. At the end they're very bent and out of shape. There we go, so I just knot it off at the end. Now I always tuck in my tails because otherwise they have a habit of poking out. So I tend to just tuck those in either through the front or the back, just to make sure that they're out of the way nice and neatly.
So I've got my 6 panels done, and now it's time to join these ones together.
So this time using the green thread, just so it's a bit more subtle, although this is going to be pointing the other way, so it's very unlikely you'll see these stitches. These are going to be an in corner rather than an out corner.
So now my pieces are joined, I'm going to stitch it together to make a loop. Now you can do it on the outside, the stitches will be visible, but it's easier. I'm going to try and do it a slightly difficult way, which is on the inside, where you have to fold in the 2 pieces. You sew up the one side, knot it off, and then sew up the other side. This is probably the hardest part of the whole construction of the box actually, but it's worth it.
So again, like before, I'll just go in from behind so that my tail of my thread doesn't hang out, and then just knot off at the corner and start sewing down. As you can see, it's a bit cumbersome, but you just have to persevere really. Oh, bit of a knot. Luckily the cardboard is still quite flexible, so it will push out of the way without creasing. You have to be careful not to be so harsh on it when you push it out of the way that it doesn't get a crease right through the middle, because you won't be able to get rid of that. So I'm going to knot it off there and switch and sew up from where I've knotted here over the other side. So now we have our loop. I'm going to do it slightly differently from the pattern instructions now. I think it might be a bit quicker. What I'm going to do is I'm going to join the lining to the top. Previously in the instructions on my other boxes, I've had it sort of separate without it being attached. I thought it looked a bit cleaner, but I think this might be a bit faster. So I'm going to give this a go, and then maybe we can see which looks best after. So I'm going to start off by getting one of my thicker lining pieces, and against one of my thicker shape A
loop pieces. It doesn't really matter which way this one goes up, but if you had a pattern on it, just make sure that it's going to be the right way when you flip it over. So I'm going to line this up with the outside, going to be very slightly narrower, so just line it up with the middle. So they're right sides together, and then I'm going to join across the top. So I'm using white thread. It will be very slightly visible, not loads, but a bit. So I'm going to join all my wide pieces first. Not essential to join those first, but that way I won't accidentally join the narrow one to the thick one by mistake. So I'm just making my way along the top. By doing it this way, we're only sewing along the top, which is a much smaller area to sew. The method in the pattern, you make another loop like the loop we've already made with the lining parts, and then you slip the lining inside. This way, we're only sewing across the top. We will flip the lining pieces over and glue them on the inside before then going ahead and attaching to the base. So we're not going to be joining all the sides. So, and this is how I've done some of my other boxes. And I think it'll be a little bit faster. And I'm all for speed.
Now they're all sewn in place, we glue them and then fold them down. Then, like before, we use clips to secure some scrap card just to stop them indenting in the front, but this time we have to use it both sides.
Okay, there we go. So those are all going to dry, and whilst those are drying, I'm going to start to join the bottom of the base pieces together. This is sort of shaped piece here. So put that to one side.
So you can start from either side. I just happen to be starting from the edge, moving towards the middle. But it's my preference to attach each jewel one at a time. I never do half and then attach. I just find it makes the middle look really messy, and I think you're very unlikely to get a perfect star arrangement if you join them half and half or twos and twos and twos. Always one at a time, in my opinion. There we go. Now I'm going to do the inside base. So now, with our shape Ds, we're going to sew them together. So I put them right side facing. Then, like with the single panels we've already glued into place, we attach the double panels. So when you line up the double panels with the box, make sure that the crease that you've sewn up on the double panels lines up with the crease that you've sewn up on the box. This is so that they sit together nicely when the box has been moulded into shape afterwards. Now I match my thread colour with the white of the lining, but really that's personal preference. You will see the stitches very slightly. So again, I would say it's probably more important to make sure that they're nice and neat. See here how you can see my creases from both the box and the panel line up exactly. Little corner's a little bit loose, so I'll just add an extra blob of glue when I'm gluing the panel into place.
So now we have all our two-piece panels stitched into place. We're going to glue them down now before we then start attaching the bases. So I'm going to turn it upside down and they will all fold down like so. And then I'm going to start to put the glue inside and then fold them up. Now when you do, you have to make sure that you bend them in the shape that it's going to be. These are the inside corners. So when we have these on, the flat side will be against the middle one and these will go in. So by bending them when you glue them, you'll just make sure that they're positioned correctly along the centre bend and butted up against the middle panel.
I guess you could turn it the other way with the flaps back on the outside, put the glue and flip them all back in. But I did find that they tended to get in the way of each other. Maybe towards the end that would be a better approach.
So my glue should be dry by now, so I'll take all these off. Okay, and now first base we're going to be attaching is the inside base. So this will be facing into the box. So on the outside we'll see the back of the card. Now I start off by joining two panels that are opposite each other in the middle. So what I would do is position the one I want to attach facing towards me. Now I want to attach it to the white one inside, so it's going to be a bit of an angle to get that working, and then I'm going to flip it over to attach the one the other side, and then that will hold it in place whilst I secure it all the way around.
So right side facing, like we have all the other times, so across the top, and flip it over. so it's a bit harder starting the other side. So what I tend to do is join my cotton to the corner of the base, and then when that's secured, I then start throat sewing on the other side. It's just hard to do both of those with the cardboard from the start. I just find it a little bit easier. Now, where the lining pieces are very slightly shorter, the inner lid sits on top of those because they sort of form a little ledge. So then they sit in, so when we attach the base, that sits on top of that. And it's not 2 layers of thickness that we can see from the outside. So as you work your way around, it becomes much easier because it holds in place and stays taut. Now for this inner lining, I'm only going to actually attach these outside edges, but if you want it to be a bit stronger, you can attach the internal corners too. Nearly there. Done. This isn't essential, but I'm just going to glue some scrap card to the bottom. This is just because both bases are made up from the same shape, so there'll be a weakness where the seams are. So just to stop it sagging, I'm just going to glue these scrap pieces of cardboard just to give it a little bit of strength. Now, before we sew the bottom of the box on, I'm just going to put some glue and stick it to both the previous layers. Now, here you can see the rosette I was talking about. This is what you can get when you make sure all your tails of your jewels point the same way. Spend a bit of time lining this up nicely. Then put something heavy in it just to help really squeeze those layers together.
So that should be long enough. It's been a couple of hours. So I take out my very heavy paperweight and then I'm going to flip it over. Now what we need to do is sew all the way around now. Could have sewn all the way around with the previous layer if you're planning on holding something quite heavy. I'm only going to be using it to store my Hexie flowers, so I don't need it to be as sturdy as it might need to be if I was putting some presents in it or something. But this side we do have to sew all the way around.
Like I did before, I'm joining up the flat ends first, and then I'm going to go back through and join up the inner corners. fab. Now I'm going to switch to green thread to do all the inner sides.
There we go. Our Hexie box. So process-wise, I think maybe this way was very slightly faster. I do think I should have spent longer lining up the bases. There was a point where I had to pull it quite tight to get it to line up at the bottom. But I think the overall effect is exactly the same. It feels nice and sturdy. It's more moving at the top, but it was in the other one as well. Yeah, overall, that's looking great. I'm going to do the tutorial for the lid in another video, just because otherwise you won't get it all done in one day. You'll have to scroll all the way through this just to get to the lid part. So for now, thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know any feedback or comments in the comments, and I'll catch you when I'm making the lid. Till next time, don't forget to like and subscribe.